back. Today we're going to be doing, upon request, Ironsights for all of our weapons. The sniper rifle won't be entirely functional because we're going to need to add a scope for that, but the Ironsights for all of our other weapons will be completely functional. Also, the weapon will not be aimed in the animation state either. That will come again in a later date. But the code functionality for this is going to be done by the end of this tutorial. So let's do a quick revision on what we've already set up here. Start with, let's go to core, open up b_hero. Have a look here in the graph. I've already set up these inputs for our weapons so that we're using the interface we created to pull trigger, release trigger, and reload. And we already did that for Ironsights as well. So Ironsights on and Ironsights off should be working. Now, if we pop over to the weapons folder and we open up weapon base, we can call that interface now. Let's type in Ironsights and grab event Ironsights on. And again, event Ironsights off. So we're going to use these two events. However, there is one small problem, and that is I preemptively set up these interface events in each individual blueprint. So these events won't fire because when I press the right mouse button, it's going to be asking the main blueprint itself for these events. Think of it as a hierarchy. If we have an event in our base weapon and we have the same event in our individual weapon, the individual weapon being lower down on the chain will take priority. So until we get rid of these two events here inside of assault rifle, it won't register in weapon base. So let's go to assault rifle, get rid of those two events here, and we're going to make sure that all of our events are free. We did nothing in pistol, so pistol would have worked. Over to shotgun. Looks like we did nothing in shotgun as well. Sniper rifle is also good. And lastly, rocket launcher. We haven't done anything in rocket launcher yet, which again will be coming in a later video. So we're good in everything except the assault rifle, and I would double check just in case you wanted to get ahead. Let's compile and save the assault rifle. Back over to weapon base, grab a print string, and we'll say Ironsights on, Ironsights off, compile, save, over to the test map, hit play. And now when I'm pressing the right mouse button or the left trigger on a controller, then that event is firing. So our event is getting input. So let's get rid of these print strings. The first thing I want to address with Ironsights is the sensitivity of the mouse or the right thumbstick, because when we zoom in, it's going to be hypersensitive and it's not going to allow us to aim precisely. So we're going to do that first. Get hero, or drag hero from over here. And to do this, we're going to set base look up and set base look right. Set base look right. And we're going to do this for both zooming in and zooming out. So we're going to need two variables to set these two. The first variable will be an Ironsights sensitivity variable, which we'll make right here and right now. Let's click on the variables tab there and go Ironsights sensitivity. And this is how we're going to make it different between every weapon. We'll set this variable for the assault rifle, pistol, shotgun, sniper rifle, and rocket launcher one by one. So let's go up to the variable type and turn that into a float. So that's going to be for when we want to zoom in. Zooming out is going to need a setting for going back to our default look rate. So to do that, we would be better off putting that reference inside the hero blueprint. So back over to hero, let's click on base lookup. That's a value of 75, and base look right is also a value of 75. So let's create a new variable. And this variable is going to be default look rate. I'm going to change it to a float. I'm going to compile so I can give it a value. We're going to punch in 75 because that's the same here. And I'm going to also drag it to the top. So let's compile and save again. Over to weapon base. Now we get default look rate. I'm using the 1 at the moment because we're going to need to set up how to change this in settings when we do a settings menu. For now, it's just default. So when we go set up the settings menu, we'll come back and set this up for a second variable. But ultimately, it's just going to have default lookup rate, default look right rate. So the way this is going to work is we're going to use our Ironsights sensitivity to divide our default look rate. So let's copy the default look rate and attach it to the hero reference. And so we're going to divide that. That would be a slash on your keyboard, float/float for a divide node. That division is then going to be our new base lookup rate. It's much easier for our zooming out. All we have to do is plug that in. Now, this is going to turn into a spaghetti mess, so I'm going to clean this up and I will speed up the footage so you don't have to sit through the laborious task. So there they are, all cleaned up. I would always encourage you to take the time to keep your blueprints clean because obviously this could turn into a mess and then you wouldn't really understand what's going on and you wouldn't be able to troubleshoot it. So with part 1 done, we're going to move on to part 2 of this blueprint. And to do this, we're going to need a blueprint called a timeline. Now this timeline is the reason that we can't do this as a function. Maybe some of you thought, well, you could set up a function and fire that function from each blueprint, but timelines don't work inside of functions. Functions need to be instantaneous. A timeline, well, you're about to see it now. So once the timeline's plugged in, we want the Ironsights on to be in play and the Ironsights off to be in reverse. So we will open up the timeline and come up to the top left here and add float track. And we'll call the float track delta. Essentially what we're creating is a graph. Right click and select add key, and this is going to add a value. So what we want to do is set this first value up so that it's 0, 0 on time and 0 on value. The second value we're going to set up so that it is 0.25 on time and 1 on value. And then because this graph is not zoomed in the correct coordinates, we can click these 2 buttons here to get that zoom happening. Click on used last keyframe so that it will remember its position, and then we will compile and save that. Now this has opened up another tab as if it was its own function. To get back to the event graph, it's probably right next to your timeline, and there we can see a node called delta. So basically, this value is going to change over the course of 0 to the 25th of a second that we've selected. So with that change, we're going to get hero reference, and we're going to set field of view. That field of view should give you a camera option. So that's the camera over in our hero right here, camera underscore FPS. So we're setting the field of view of our camera according to this value. Now 0 to 1 is not going to be a lot in the case of field of view. That's all right because we're not done yet. Next up, let's drag out of delta and get a lerp. We want a float lerp, which doesn't have any definition here. And we want to plug this delta by holding control and selecting this node. We want to plug that into the alpha. This brings us to our next variable. So click on variables up here again. We're going to call this Ironsights FOV. This is going to be the definitive value of our zoom or our field of view. And we're going to plug this into B. This is also going to be adjusted inside of each individual weapon. Return value is going to go into in field of view, and A is going to be 90 at the moment because that is the field of view of our camera. If you have adjusted the field of view of your camera and you're not sure, go back to Be Hero, click on Camera FPS, and just double check the field of view here. So that's pretty much this system set up. Let's add a reroute node here to keep it clean. But to test it, we're going to need to set this up on our weapons. So I'm going to compile and save our weapon base. And what better weapon to start with than the assault rifle? Click on class defaults, and Ironsights sensitivity and Ironsights FOV should be here ready to go. Now it defaults to a value of 0, which isn't going to be great when we're creating new weapons. So let's go and set a default value, and it's important that we only do this once because otherwise this default value will override all the individual values later on. Again, the parent-child class relationship. So field of view will be default 90 and sensitivity will be default 1. So basically no changes. We'll compile and save that and double check that those values have come over so it's functional, even if we hop in now and it's not going to break the camera. So I've already got some values written down from when I've played with these before, so I don't have to spend a lot of time tinkering. Feel free to use these values for the moment and adjust them to your heart's content to make it play the way you want to play it. So my assault rifle sensitivity is going to be a division of 3, and my field of view will go to 60 with an assault rifle. I will quickly pop back over to weapon base and show you how that will work, or explain how it will work. So when we press Ironsights on, we'll get the default look rate, which is 90, and we will divide it by, in the case of the assault rifle, 3. So that will be how sensitive our mouse is, or how slow our mouse is once we're looking. Then we move over here. The timeline will move our value from 0 to 1 so that we get a smooth transition, and that transition will go from 90 to 60, which is our Ironsights field of view, and set the field of view back inside of our hero. And then when we let go of the right mouse button or the left trigger on the controller, we will set our base lookup rate and our base look right rate back to their default values coming from our hero reference. And we will reverse the Ironsights timeline, thus setting the value from 60 to 90 and setting that value back in our camera. Now over to the pistol. My pistol values were a division of 4 and an Ironsights of 45. Now back over to the shotgun. The shotgun wasn't nearly as sensitive, so I went for a value of division of 2 and an Ironsights of 75. Now let's go to tests and open up the sniper rifle. Sniper rifle got the biggest treatment with a division of 10, and then our Ironsights will be 15. And lastly, let's go to the rocket launcher, which isn't set up yet, but we can still set up the Ironsights sensitivity and field of view. For this, I went a division of 5 and a field of view of 30. So now let's save all of that and see if our handiwork has paid off. Hit play on the map. And now when I hold the right mouse button, we are getting that zoom, and it is reasonably smooth. Now let's press Q and test out the pistol. And if I wiggle the mouse there and then wiggle the mouse without, the sensitivity difference is very noticeable, for me at least. It shouldn't be stupidly noticeable. It should just be a little bit more sensitive. Now let's pick up our shotgun. From our last tutorial, we can now do that. Just a little bit of a zoom here and a little bit less sensitivity. I can't imagine people are going to be doing point accuracy with a shotgun. Now let's try the sniper rifle, and this should be intense. It is quite intense, and we can hit things. And lastly, let's just double check that the rocket launcher is a thing. Yep, that's pretty good. So that's the Ironsights functionality done. Again, like I said, there are another 2 parts to this, but we've got the basic gist of it and we're good to go on to the next tutorial.